A big win and a career night from an unlikely hero, a man who deserves so much praise from fans. That man is none other than Carter Gilmore. Plus, Junior Day came and went. Who is the lock to head to Madison? I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, the Badgers had another one-up, one-down week, which is nice considering both games were on the road. The big story, however, is the performance of star John Tonje and supreme off-the-bench performance from Carter Gilmore. We give that man some much-deserved love and get into the scary February that lies ahead. Last week's Junior Day is officially behind us. We touched on some of the guys last week, but we get into a more in-depth discussion along with Nick Osen from 247 Sports. We'll touch on 6 players who visited Madison and get some updates on their recruitment. We are at the Bucky Report on YouTube and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button so you know when we make new content. Hit the like button, all that good stuff. We appreciate it very much. We have a special guest with us today, Nick Osen, who has, I think it's been a minute, Nick. You've got all kinds of stuff going on in the recruiting world. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Guys, it's honestly been too long. And you know that a lot of that is on me. It has been busy times coming right after the holidays, but it has not been from lack of reaching out from you guys. So I'm grateful. I knew a couple weeks ago, I was like, all right, Junior Days are coming up. This next week is not too crazy. Let's get back on with the guys. I've been good. A really good month of January. We've got some, honestly, football recruiting news, couple tidbits going forward with the actual team. And then, of course, the basketball team. Can't wait to hear some of Justin's thoughts, Rajiv, because we knew some of this was possible, man.
Oh, yeah, we did.
I never said it wasn't possible. I said you got to prove it.
He has nothing bad to say these days about
I gotta have fun with you.
About that. Yes, indeed. Justin, how are you? How's the weekend going?
I'm doing good, man. Well, yeah, my soccer team won. I witnessed what seems to be the end of the world last night with Luka Doncic being traded to the Lakers for like a bag of M&Ms. Oh, man. What a weird weekend.
I think it was Skip Bayless. I saw something on Twitter today that actually said the Lakers got like the Mavericks got the better end of the deal. I'm like, wait, what? It's just.
If you say that, you know nothing about basketball.
I mean,
is the scariest playoff player in the world, and I say that because you could have the worst team talent-wise overall. He legitimately, it doesn't matter if he is on, he will beat a better team because he's just that good. I don't think there's anybody else in the NBA that is as scary as him in a series that if he just clicks, it's done. It used to be Steph. Like Steph used to be that guy before he, kind of started to show his age a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was honestly one of the silliest things I've ever seen. I saw that trade. I'm like, wait, what's going on? That just didn't make sense. And I'm not even an NBA guy. And believe me, that's just weird. All right. So lots to get into. The basketball had a decent week. We went two road games at Maryland that the team dropped, of course. And yesterday at Northwestern, frankly, I mean, one of the worst halves of basketball that I have ever seen. I put it all over Twitter. I was on the reaction show on Locked On, and I honestly could not believe the performance that this team put out in the first half. And thank God that Northwestern just wasn't in the game at all. And we could have been down by 30 points in that game. Just absolutely nuts. But of course, Carter Gilmore, we're going to start with Carter Gilmore. Just an absolute monster story. In 24 minutes, he was 5 of 7 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 7 rebounds, 15 points. We constantly talk about the effort that he puts out. We constantly talk about how big of a jump he's made this year. But to have that kind of a performance on the road when your team really needed it, Justin, is absolutely fantastic. What did you make of yesterday's game, and what did you make of the performance of Carter Gilmore?
I mean, this is going to be remembered as the Carter Gilmore game because he kind of put the team on his back a little bit. Tonje did too, I mean, Blackwell had a forgettable game here, but
Oh yeah.
Carter Gilmore played really well. And he's been playing well this entire season, to be fair. He legitimately has gone from somebody who you would look at as like, don't even bother to cover him outside the perimeter. So I think he's got to be close to 40% now on the season. Like, it's very low sample size, but he's actively been a solid outside shooter this season, which is a huge deal, because I think if you could say that if you could get some outside shooting from him and with all the other things that he does, you now look at him like he is an asset on the floor. In past seasons, the issue with him was the fact that he really didn't draw the defense to him at all. He's not a great interior guy from a scoring perspective. He's not terrible, but he's not great on the interior. But he's known for his hustle. And if you can get some outside shooting with the way they play 5 out, you're going to get him to be out on the floor and to really open things up. Whereas in prior seasons, we've talked about it. Like, teams would help off of him, and it would really kind of set back the offense overall. Him and Wall, to be quite honest, when they're on the perimeter.
What'd you make of that game yesterday, Nick?
Yeah, so I was fortunate, guys, down in Evanston for that one. So,
Nice.
Kind of a lot of thoughts after. I'll say first with Gilmore, man, a lot of respect to this young man, honestly. We didn't have a huge, media contingent down there. I think there were just 3 or 4 of us, doing this interview. And I asked him basically about the crowd chanting his name after and just how
Country
cool
Club?
it was. But what'd you say?
Country Club?
But you guys know me. Like, it's all very sincere. And he was like something to the effect of, and man, that really made, all the things I've heard from like haters in this fan base worth it. And it's kind of like, dang, like these guys see all this stuff. And Justin, you're spot on with, he wasn't like this reliable shooter. However, I still think a lot of that was mental, because if you watch his high school tape, he was a phenomenal scorer right here in the state. And it wasn't just like, oh, this is some nice story, Gilly had a good game. They needed him, guys, to win this game. Like you mentioned, Tonje, Justin, of course, he has been an all Big Ten guy, but Gilmore, between the shooting, the on-ball defense, the versatility that this man brings, guys, I'm really impressed. And I think there's a legitimate, probably 8 guys I'm really comfortable going with in March, potentially 9, and he is comfortably around 6 or 7 with Kamari McGee.
Yeah, I think if I would take a look at it, I think I would say 9. I feel I'm comfortable with Amos out there, even though he's not always an asset. He's not a train wreck out there. I think you go McGee, you've got Gilmore, you've got Janicki.
Yeah.
Those 4, I think you feel pretty good about in most games.
Yeah.
I don't think any of them are so poor defensively that you look at like, I can't put this guy out there. Like, he's going to be a problem.
There are times where I feel like Janicki is an asset to us. There are times where I feel like I'm struggling with him at times, but that's okay. Like, we do need the body off the bench. I think 8 for sure. Amos, you've got to have someone else that's, Amos he's a stretch 4. He can kind of play all over the place a little bit. Mm-hmm. He hasn't been amazing, but he's got the athleticism, no doubt. But, and the other thing, John Tonje, just to touch on him for a bit, it's an incredible game yesterday, just taking shots that, frankly, you're kind of just shocked that he makes a lot of the shots. They're not good shots oftentimes. They're just shots that somebody has to take. He has got an incredible ability to score the basketball. Once again, shooting well from the free throw line, just kind of does everything. And the one thing that what I said yesterday that I'll say again is it's unfortunate to me that we can never get Blackwell and Tonje to do it at the same time, in the same game. Now, if that happens in March, we can make a really serious run. I'm frustrated by that. Blackwell did not have a good game. The bigs did not have good games. And the thing about it is, like, we need to figure this out. Like, not figure this out. We need to keep going, and we've got to have some better performances all around, because the schedule is absolutely brutal in the month of February. Now, we know Greg Gard has a bit of a history in February. Last year, we were, flying high, ranked 6th in the country at the end of January, and then February hit, and I don't even know if we won a game in February, which is crazy. But at least we've done that now. But yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. I do want to touch on a couple things with the basketball. First of all, the 3-point shooting percentage on this team: Kamari McGee 54%, John Tonje 41, Carter Gilmore 40, Marcus Silver 40, Nolan Winter 39, John Blackwell 35, Stephen Crowell 32. Sadly, the list that I just said does not have Max Klesmit on it. He's 28% from the field from 3-point.
I'm almost shocked that he's at 28 now.
I think Max Klesman did have a better game yesterday in the sense that I think he did a little more out there. He was a little more active. He tried to penetrate. I actually wasn't hating on his performance at all yesterday. However, he's still shooting 28% from 3-point line, which is his bread and butter, which is something that we need from him. Nick, where do you feel like, how do you feel like this team progresses if Max Klesman does not get this right and Water doesn't find its level and he struggles continuously from the 3?
Yeah, Rajiv, that's a really good question. I guess I'll answer it with yesterday showed me something, a little bit like you alluded to. He got 1 or 2 to fall, and I don't know if you guys saw in, some of my writing or from other media, like at one point, Coach Gard told him, shoot the bleep ball. It's clearly gotten to his head a little bit, but still the focus is for him to just keep the defense on and still be able to do that because he's shown what he can do. Now, I'll kind of add on that with, I thought his defense yesterday was terrific. I thought that was a little bit better, more like last year, better than it's been this year. Penetrating, like you mentioned, he had, I think, 3 assists, 2 really smart plays late. So I would say that though you want to see that 3-point percentage go up, and I've still got faith, I think as long as he is not being, of course, a detriment, which I don't expect at all, because I think he's got the game and he's confident and he's making other plays. Just because of some of those other numbers you mentioned, Rajiv, I think the offense will still be okay. Do you want it at least 31, 33, 35 would be great. But even if it's just creeping around 30 with everything else he can bring, like he showed yesterday, I've still got a lot of faith as long as you've got either one of the Johns shooting that well too.
So my thoughts on this a little bit are, I think it's gotten in his head to the point where some of the shots he's taken, I just don't love the shots. He'll put a ball up, and some of it's not his fault. He gets caught with the ball late in the shot clock, but he took 4 3-point attempts yesterday. Until he starts hitting more, I don't want him taking more than that. Like you think about it, he goes 1 for 7. That's 3 possessions that you'd like to cut off and just say, if I can get somebody else to take this shot, if we even get one more, that's points that we're losing out on. And he's just not feeling it right now. I know you want a shooter to shoot, but I think at some point if it's not clicking, you just need to be like, all right, I've taken 4 shots here. I'm not hitting them. I clearly am not comfortable. Don't keep pushing through. Because I don't know about you guys. I watch him when he goes up and lifts off for his shots now. And you can see that he's not comfortable. It's not confident. It's not smooth when he's shooting. And it's both the way it comes off the rim, but also the way when you see it come off, it just looks like he's not looking at the rim. Like he's a guy who's just kind of blindly putting it up. And I know that's not the fact. That's not the case, but he's out of rhythm. Like his mechanics are off.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, when Max Klesman is on the floor and he has an open shot, he needs to take it, period. Because if he doesn't, then that thing, that the confidence that you speak of, Justin, will never come back. And there is a time, I said many times, I still think he's going to have a nuclear game one of these days. Yesterday I thought it was almost going to happen because he got a bucket inside and then he made a 3 right after that. I'm like, here we go. Here he comes. Mm-hmm. And he just couldn't ever get good looks after that. I want him to keep shooting. I'm confident in his ability to do it. We've said before, Kamara McGee needs to eat into his minutes a little bit. The McGee needs to play more. There's no doubt about that. But Max is still an important part of this team. And I think that's definitely going to come. But yeah, look, I think overall you look at this team and the performance, winning on the road at Northwestern. Now we're 4-1 in conference at home. We're 3-3 on the road on schedule. Very, very good. That's a very, very good line. And we've got a home game coming up against Indiana, and then a road game against Iowa, and then a road game against
very
Purdue.
Winnable week.
I mean, yeah, winnable week. But then we've got Purdue, we've got Oregon, we got Illinois. Got to get the wins when we can get them. We got to take them when we can get them.
Up to that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that there's a lot to look forward to on this team. But Carter Gilmore, just getting back to him really quick before we move on to some February predictions. But man alive, like I'm just so proud of that guy. I really am. Like he has gone through, frankly, to be honest, like this podcast last year, Locked On, you find a Badger podcast, there weren't the nicest things said about Carter Gilmore because he wasn't playing that well. And that's just a fact. And he took that and he worked his ass off in the offseason. He got stronger. He got better. He's shooting the ball more confidently. He's getting rebounds. He's hustling. He's playing defense better. Everything he's doing is better than it was last year. And I could not possibly be more happy for this young man? And man, do we need it. Like I'll tell you what, like Badger fans are loving it. Like Carter Gilmore is literally went from, Carter Gilmore to Carter Gilmore. I mean, it's shocking to think about this. Like, how does a guy translate and transition from one season to the next with this kind of a level? It's remarkable. I'm so proud of him. I'm so happy for him. And, like, it's something that's special. Bo Dragon, he scored 15 points in one game. You people act like Gilmore is the second coming of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Bo, let me tell you something. He deserves credit right now because, and yes, he did score 15 points, but if you watch the game, and I know you did, Bo, he played great the entire time. And 15 points for Carter Gilmore is a lot. And 3 of 5 from 3 is magnificent.
Listen,
I can't say
Carter
enough good
Gilmore
things
is a
about
lot.
this guy.
So 15
I can't say enough good things about him. I'm so proud of him, and he deserves all the credit that he's getting right now. And we're going to need him because now, if you have a confident Carter Gilmore and you couple that with hopefully a growing Nolan Winter that needs to continue to get better. I mean, Nolan Winter's he was my mid yesterday. I just feel like there's moments where he's great. There's moments where he's not. But if you couple all that together, you really have a team that can make some noise in March. It's special. It's special. Nolan Winter, Justin, what was your take on him yesterday and his performance and where you think he's at right now this year?
I mean, quite honestly, he's ahead of schedule. Overall, I look at him as a player. This is a true sophomore that's averaging double digits right now in the season or close to it. I don't think any of us expected that. You want to go back to Frank Kaminsky? What was he averaging in his second season? Like 5 points or something like that, or 5.5. I think he's kind of following the John Lure progression, which is you look at him, I think next year you'll probably be looking at him, a guy who's probably going to be in the mid-teens as a scorer when he gets a little more mass on him. I think he's got a chance to end up similarly to him being like an all-conference type guy at like 18 points a game as a senior. The athleticism is there. He needs to get stronger because defensively it will help. One of the things I took away from him watching him yesterday, I liked seeing him affect shots, which is something we don't get from Crow at all. And that seeing Winter out there actively doing that is a big deal for this team because – listen, it's all about just making guys uncomfortable enough that you get rebounds. Like that's part of the problem with this team is they really struggle to affect shots. And when guys are getting easy shots at the rim, it doesn't matter if you have 2 7-footers. Well, Winter is becoming an asset out there in terms of being able to affect that. They still need to rebound better. That's that's just the shortcoming of this team. And maybe if it was next year, Winter, I think, will be a plus rebounder because he's actually been pretty solid this year. But that's a struggle that this team still has. But I think he's really progressed. I think that you look at where he was last year and the level of confidence he has by comparison isn't even close.
I quite honestly, I love how you said, Justin, a little bit ahead of schedule because that tends to fit kind of with what I've thought, right? I thought, well, we know as a fact, Coach Gard told us that he was the best rebounder in the offseason, right? All these practices, he was the guy. And I think we've seen kind of his stroke, but I'll be honest, at times, I think you saw his potential last year, but the game looked a little too fast at times. I don't think he looked the most comfortable. Will you see that a moment here and there? Yeah, I mean, you even see that for Blackwell and veterans at times. But I think in general, he looks a lot more comfortable. I love how he's actually progressed defensively. I think you want him to get stronger for sure, but he's one of those guys, kind of like how we would talk, Justin, about like an outside linebacker. Like you don't want him to put too much where he's not kind of as fluid, not kind of as athletic and moving well. But I think, another 10 to 12 would be terrific. His shot is gorgeous. Like the way he releases quickly too. I think it was out west on that trip. I really took notice of that. So I thought that was really impressive. And just the fact, guys, I agree, Rajiv, it maybe wasn't like his best game yesterday, but man, that was a grinded out type of game. I'm not sure if you guys feel this way, but I personally, there aren't probably 10 to 12 coaches in the country. If you have to make one game tough on the opponent that I would take over Chris Collins. I think he does a phenomenal job at scouting at Northwestern. And so I just think it was a really good scout. And they just didn't have really the dudes to kind of compete with the Badgers in the second half without Barnheiser. But as a whole, I think Winter's been really good. I think he'll continue to get better this year. And I just think there are 4, 5, 6 legitimate mouths to feed. And so you maybe won't see crazy numbers, but some of that consistency that you mentioned, Justin, I think that'll be here to stay. And man, if he gets to 17, 18 points as a Badger, like average-wise, that's an NBA player in my eyes.
Yeah, I feel like he's not I'm not really concerned with the production that he has right now. His production's fine as far as I'm concerned. I really want to focus on the performances getting better. And I think that there are times when, he had a great sequence yesterday where he hit a three and then he came back and had a little, he kind of put his guy on skates, as Ryan said yesterday, and he got an and one in the lane and he moved a little bit. But then there are also times where he just fumbled the ball. Yeah, he just fumbled a rebound, or someone threw it at him and he went off his foot. Like, there are just times if he can clean it up, and play like a big and really play confidently down low, then you can really see Nolan Winter take off. And that's when he can get closer to his ceiling, because he still has the shooting ability. He still has that on the floor scoring ability. And if he can actually play with his back to the basket in the post, which he doesn't do very well, he couldn't get out of there, got caught off on a double team yesterday. And that'll come. That's what I'm really focused on with Nolan Winter. I'm not worried about the production as much right now as I'm just worried about him getting a cleaner game and getting to the point where I feel like he can really act like more of a big, because he can be a dominant big in this league, but he's just got to take that next step. You were going to say something, Justin? I feel like I cut you off.
Yeah, I agreed. I was going to say, I know the sequence you're talking about, because I gave him credit for the fact that he did a great job affecting the shot on that one. And then the rebound came off and he dropped the ball on it and they ended up getting it back. And I'm like, finish that. Man, that right there could have been such a great sequence for you. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he's a work in progress. He's always going to be that. The big thing for him is going to be, and I agree, you don't want him to get super heavy. Like John Lure is a really apt example for him. Lure, I think, left at 235, 240, which I think is probably what you want Winter at in college, because he's not a guy that you want to put a lot of weight on, because he does move fairly well for a big.
I'd say very well. Dude, John Lure was an all-timer for me. I think if he can get there. I
mean, he's not that type of athlete. No offense to Winter. He's kind of in between the Crowell and that level. So I mean, Lure was actually a plus athlete for a big. Like when if you see his combine numbers, he was pretty darn good. I think he had like a 35-inch vertical. Winter has a chance to be better than we've had since probably Kaminsky in an interior guy. So I think that's a plus, but they've got to find somebody to pair with him next year.
He needs to play better in the post if he wants that kind of a designation. Like,
he's a true sophomore. Like,
for sure. And I like he took a step this year. I want to see another step next year, because that, to me, that's the thing that's still missing. Like, if he's going to play, he's going to keep putting on weight, play as the 5, a big 4. I think he needs to definitely improve his post play. I love this comment. Winter needs to get mean. Yeah, he does. He needs to, get a little salty out there and start playing with a little more of a mean streak, for sure.
I say he has it at times. He does have it at times, because we've seen at practice, he'll get into you, man. He's really competitive. But I hear you, especially in the post. I hear you.
Yeah. Before we move on to football, guys, quick predictions. So the month of February, again, it's been a bit of a bugaboo for us in the last couple of years. We're obviously already 1-0, which is good. We're home to Indiana, at Iowa, at Purdue, home to Illinois, home to Oregon, home to Washington. So those last 3 are at home. We've got 6 more games in February. Justin, what is our record at the end of February, just for February? So we're already 1-0, but there's 7 total games in February. What do we do in those 7 games?
What's the schedule again?
Indiana at home, at Iowa, at Purdue, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, all at home.
I'm ready for this one.
4-2 out of those.
There's 7 games. There's seven games.
Oh, we already have 1 in the bag, so it'll be 5-2.
So you're 5-2. Wow, boy.
Some of those teams, like if Wisconsin's actively playing, which they've consistently been able to play quality offense this whole season. Like a lot of these teams just can't keep up with the scoring, and that's part of it.
Rajiv will be ready to come at me then.
It's an efficiency issue with this team, where I just look at it, and if they continue to play at the same level of efficiency, I just don't see a lot of these teams, because The thing is, you look at a team like Northwestern, and people are going to be like, well, Northwestern's not that good. But what Northwestern does do pretty well is they're pretty good defensively. They're not a great offensive team, but defensively, they're not a train wreck. So they keep themselves in games.
No.
Some of these teams that they're going to be playing against coming up, they're good offensively, but they don't really have much in the bag defensively to cause problems. Now, Illinois is clearly potentially an issue for us if they're healthy. We struggled with that team in the first game. And I think that you look at them and maybe Oregon, because if I still want to see what this team does against teams that are superior athletically. Arizona, they showed up really well. I need to see them do it a few more times to know that it's not going to be like that was just a good game for them.
All right, Nick, what's your record?
So after that UCLA game, I wrote kind of on the boards, like, guys, don't be too, sad about this. It took all this to happen, whatever. And I said 4-1 in the next 5. So they're 2-1 going now forward. Indiana, you can't lose that at home. I don't think Iowa is that good. I was high on them, but they've disappointed. Purdue's tough, man, and that's a tough place to win. Illinois, Justin, you're spot on, but, man, their inconsistencies have really kind of jumped out at me the last couple of weeks. I'm actually low on Oregon at this point. I was super high as well, but, some of my bracketologist friends I follow that do great work, they just can't get that kind of marquee win recently. And then Washington, no disrespect, they're not good. So I have in February, Rajiv, if they can stay healthy, I have Wisconsin going 6-1.
Wow, 6-1.
I will say a loss at Mackey, but man, there's just something about these guys. I mean, only one loss at home, right? I believe.
Yep. One loss at
Michigan, and a game that they very, very well could have won.
Michigan's a terrible matchup for them.
Yeah, I'm going to say it, man. I'm going to call my shot.
Listen, I love it. I love the optimism from you, Nick. I expect that from you. I didn't expect 5-2 from Justin because, that's just that's nuts.
Hey,
but
at this point, I have to say they are what they are until they prove me they're not. And last year, they proved that they weren't in the second half of the season. Right now, until they start playing poorly, I got to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, so I think the Indiana game's a win. I think of the last 3, the Illinois, Oregon, Washington, I think we'll drop one of those. I hope we don't, but I just feel like we will. Yeah. Because I always say, like, you're going to lose to a team you shouldn't, you're going to beat a team you shouldn't type thing. I think 5-2 is where we finish the month of February, which is, again, by the way, that's really good. If that'll put us at 6 losses in the conference, and then we do play out Michigan State. So that means we could go 13-7 very easily, probably finish as a 4 seed in the tournament. Like, there's a lot of potential looking ahead to this schedule. It's a gauntlet though, but you can also see us going on the road and losing at Iowa, losing at Mackey Arena, losing at home to Illinois. Like, you could absolutely see a situation where we lose 3 in a row. So these are the things we have to guard against. We have to remember that this conference is extremely difficult. I will not hear any argument that says this conference is not good, because it is. And it's
anybody
really,
that says that isn't watching.
Yeah, I mean, this conference is top to bottom dynamite, and I enjoy it. I very much am a big fan of Big Ten basketball. I am excited about this month, but this is a test month. Like, this is how it was last year too. We started well. Can we do it when it matters right here? Can we actually get these games? And I'll tell you what, the Northwestern win was a really good start to that. A really good start. Beating a game that, beating a team that absolutely could have beat us, and we did everything we possibly could to throw away the game in the first half. Literally just unacceptable basketball. I don't even want to talk about it. I was furious yesterday.
Can I add one thing, Rajiv, just going forward? So obviously we'll be favored. Wisconsin will be favored Tuesday. I think they'll be slight favorite in Iowa. I personally believe that they'll be favored in every game other than the one at Purdue.
Yeah, I think you're
Illinois
right.
at home, or is that in
Illinois at home? Oregon's at home. Washington, we will probably be favored in every game, other than the Mackey Arena one. Which, listen, I'm from Lafayette, Indiana. Mackey Arena is a brutal place to play basketball. It's not. We're not winning that game at all. Let's switch gears. Let's talk football. We haven't had Nick on for quite a while, so we are going to get into the junior day guys. We're going to go over some stuff. But Nick, I'm just going to give you the floor for a minute, kind of your state of the program. Like, where, how are you feeling about football now that we've got Grimes in, Billy Edwards, all that kind of stuff. We all know what's happened. Give me sort of your state of play right now for the football program and your level of kind of excitement or concern going into next year.
Yeah. Well, I say this with a smile on my face. I'm always excited to cover this stuff. So, my excitement is high, but in all seriousness, man, reflecting on this last month and a half, we'll just focus on kind of portal, staff additions, staff changes. And we got the chance about a week and a half ago to speak with some of these new coaches. So really since Billy Edwards Jr. signed on, right? Since he's been here and Coach Grimes, I got this sense a little bit outside the program, but checking in here and there with somebody has a connection to, that type of thing. I just got the sense that this fit with Coach Grimes and Edwards Jr. going into this season, meshing really well, that I think that there's a lot of potential there. And then when we got to speak with these coaches, and now my mind is specifically focusing on Kenny Guyton at QB's coach and Coach Jeff Grimes, and just hearing a little bit more about their pairing, what they think about Edwards Jr. And I mean, I think we've all talked and feel similar there. I really think that he can be a terrific fit in this offense, and just kind of Guyton's really vision for the QB room, and Grimes and just how much he values being here and the old line and creative run games, but still going vertical with guys like Vinny Anthony, speaking with parents here and there. I think that if not a quiet confidence, I think that there is a quiet comfort with this staff and these new changes and kind of the overall visions right now. I also look at the schedule, and though I have no regrets from last year based on what I saw with my own eyes at camp, I'm not going to make, any too early predictions right now, but I'm going to say what I've said since October, before some of these things even happen. I think that the quality of football and the meshing of the systems and work with Brady Collins and all of that, I think that visually, aesthetically, it is going to look more comfortable, function better, and just make more sense within Wisconsin football, if that makes sense. I think that there were just too many changes going on at once. And I think personnel-wise, scheme, and just comfort for some of these young guys coming up, I think that there is a good confidence there going into this fall.
I think I love one thing that you said, quiet comfort. I think that's great, because I think that's really what Grimes brings, is that comfort. That was a really, really good way of saying it. It's about restoring our identity to a certain extent, and to recognizing that if we're going to win at Wisconsin, if Luke Fickell is not going to go into a tailspin, which it feels like we were in at the end of last year, he needed to steady the ship. And I've said this multiple times. He needs to have a floor raising type of a hire. And Jeff Grimes, I think, does that. And I think the comfort piece of it is the right way to say it. Doesn't need to be confidence, but it's like, okay, let's all take a breath. And let's recognize that we're a good running team. We've got a fantastic offensive line. Not only now, but 2 to 3 years into the future, our offensive line looks like the Badger lines of old, right? When you see guys like Kevin Haywood and Emerson Mandel and Hardy Watts and these recruits, you're like, holy shit, we're going to be good, right? We're going to be good. So you lean into that. You lean into your strength. You get a quarterback that has proven himself. And by the way, you get 2 of them, because the last couple of years we've had some issues with injuries at our starting quarterback. So you got Danny O'Neal back there too. And that adds to that comfort level, right? Because you know that even if something were to happen to Billy Edwards, you got another guy there. And you got your Tretch back, which is great. You got Vinny Anthony back. There's just there, the offense is going to be better than it was last year. And you got comfortable, again, I'm going to use that word again, really good on the defensive side by getting size, right? By getting guys that are over 300 pounds that can eat up the middle. So I think that really is a really good way to describe it. And I'm glad you said that. And there is a lot to be in this year. Yeah,
I just thought of that, honestly.
It's good. I think it's
kind of verbiage.
But I think it sums it up. It's just it's truly the way that the program feels like it's going right now. We needed to stop taking some risks, and we needed to kind of bring things back. Because if you take too many risks, you're going to really kind of get out there. So let's talk about Junior Day. We got a lot of guys to touch on a little bit. Justin, I do
want to weigh in on this a little bit.
Yeah, please. Sorry, I've meant to come to you.
Oh, it's okay. My thoughts on this are pretty simple. I like, the more I've dug into the Grimes hire, I've really liked him. I will say this. I'm in love with the QBs that he seems to be picking up on because they fit exactly what I look for in terms of QBs. I've seen a bunch of athletic kids with big arms that can run around and do things that you would want to see Wisconsin quarterbacks do for the last 30 years. And just for whatever reason, Wisconsin has never targeted them. And it's drove me nuts. Like the Bo Bentley one, I realize that one's probably just, it's gone out of our reach at this point when you see Ohio State sending him an offer. But that's what I mean. Like, we're seeing guys, I'm seeing the level of athlete at that QB position. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. I don't believe any of these coaches can tell without a doubt that a quarterback can process and read coverage and do everything at a college level when they're in high school. I just don't believe it. I think it's nonsense when these guys want to sit there and say, well, I'm giving up on these athletic skills because this guy's such a fast ability to do that. How often do we see a guy like that comes in that is that? You don't. Like, we see guys
not in junior, senior years.
Yeah, exactly. You see guys that come in athletically that the mind catches up with it, but they're athletic enough to get away with the things that they don't quite have the tools yet to do. So they can buy time and find an open guy because of the fact that they can't see it yet. And that has killed Wisconsin forever. We just haven't had a guy since Brooks Bollinger. I think who was the other one I brought up? The one that was in 2008. The kid from Donovan, yeah. And I said, that's kind of the type of athlete that they're getting in the quarterback room that we haven't had. Like, those are the type of guys that I want in the room, because if one of them hits from a mental standpoint, now you've got an NFL guy. Like, you've got 2 years with a guy probably that's going to come in and just set the world afire. And he's athletic enough that it's going to be a problem. But even if he's not going to hit an NFL level of mentality, he's probably still going to be able to read at a reasonable level that the athleticism will give him a leg up. And that's part of the problem that we haven't had before. We haven't had guys with the mobility and ability to stretch things out to make it easier on themselves. Beyond that, I will talk offensive line play. It's as simple as this to me. I feel like some of the guys from the previous staff were kind of propped up by ratings that were given to them previously, where we looked at them as these guys that were borderline 5 stars or whatever. Athletically, when I look at some of these guys like Mandel and Haywood, I'm like, there's a night and day difference in terms of the physicality and athleticism that I see, just the movement ability, like lateral quickness, the ability to just be fluid as athletes. I think Haywood and Mandel are just beyond that. Corey's kind of in that same route. And I really like the guys that are coming in from this last class. I don't think they're that far off. I think we've gotten far more athletic rather than being a road grader offensive line. And I think you need that now with the level of speed there is in the college game on the defensive side. You have to be able to somewhat match it unless you're just a dominant force being able to road grade straight ahead. And we haven't had that in a long time.
I think there's a nice blend of both. I really do. Like, I think a guy like Mandel, I've seen it with my own eyes, can do both. I've covered his recruitment for a long time.
He's strong as a bull, but the kid is so fluid.
We know what we think of Haywood. I think this 25 class, I actually think it could be top to bottom just as good. Like, I really do.
I'm so bullish on our offensive line and the recruiting. Like, I mean, geez, it's fantastic with the things that Brady Collins does with them physically. You look at Blazek. I mean, there's so much to like about what's happening. Yeah. Some comments here. P says the year of the Kekahuna is upon us. Mr. October, nobody will give Bucky much of a shot. Us against the world, Grimes against humanity. That was pretty funny. Steve Nebone says if Nizier gets an extra year, our secondary will be really good. That is something obviously Nizier Forkern has suing the NCAA for an additional year of eligibility, which we'll get into that on a future show. I have some thoughts on this. I don't love everything that's going on in college football, but we've talked enough about it. And then Bo Dragon with a fairly Bo Dragon take, but it is fair. He says they replaced small D linemen who sucked with bigger D linemen who might suck. I think this is a fair point because we talk a lot about the size of the D line. And I do because it's important. But I mean, this is the one X factor. This is the one big question mark on this team. I don't think offensively much of a question mark. When you got Edwards, our offensive line, those two running backs, Tanner Koziel, I mean, hello, 94 catches. Our offense is going to be better. The defense is a big question mark, which we'll see what happens.
I want to weigh in on that a little bit because I actually like the defensive line room. Like, for better or worse, athletically speaking, from what I saw from the guys that they're bringing in, it depends on what you're setting your baseline for and what your expectations are. I do think the defensive line is going to be much better than last year. I don't think it's going to necessarily show up in terms of shock plays. I think they'll be able to hold the point a lot better than last year because I just think they have more strength and body. The body types that they're bringing in are a better fit to do that.
For sure.
And I think that is a major positive for this defense that helps you turn some things loose. Now, pass rush, I'm not putting that on the defensive line. You need to see that from the edge guys, and I have to see Mitchell get it done this year in terms of finding somebody. It doesn't have to be both, but I need somebody out there that I look at and say, okay, this is a guy we can hang our hat on going through the next couple of years, whether it be Heiberger, whether it be a guy like Clayton getting in early, whether it be one of the middle linebackers coming in with one of these groups that like Posa or somebody that starts to turn loose, or even Allegro taking a step and being a legitimate pass rush guy. Mm-hmm. They have got to find somebody that's capable of getting downhill and scaring a quarterback. I think the defensive line will be a little better at, getting those tackles for loss and being able to create some of that for the linebackers. I think they will. I think there's a chance here if the defensive line can hold up and keep blockers off, that you're going to see the linebackers look much improved this year.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even rule out. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wouldn't even rule out a guy like the Kentucky transfer, maybe being a pass rush type. If not this fall, then next. Tyrese Fearbry, I believe is how you say it. I like the kid from Louisville, Mason Rieger.
Mm-hmm. He's my guy.
Yeah. So
I think he's going to be the one that's something to take out that people have not been listening to me on. I said in the Discord several times. This is a guy that had 6 sacks on a bad knee playing for a partial season at Louisville before he went down with injury that year.
Yeah. I think that this group, I hear you, like it's going to be time for us to see it put together, but I just think there's really too much talent in there not to see it at this point. I think you make a really good point about kind of the point of attack and trusting those guys up front, specifically on the inside, to bring a little bit more this fall. I really think we are going to see that because E.J. Whitlow has been a developer throughout his career.
Peterson,
but really I think it's going to be exciting. I honestly, the more I've watched, I don't know if it's this year or next, but I like Charles Perkins.
Yeah, them too. It sounds like virtually everybody that's come in is at least in the 290 range.
And they've been flashing him on social media.
Is already over 300. Somebody said this kid from Grambling's like 305 or something like that already. He's like 6'7", 305. If that's the case, like
I hadn't heard that. That surprised me a little bit just because of, I think, what he was at Grambling. But, I mean, yeah, he's huge, athletic, long, really interesting type there.
I would just say this. I got to see it to believe it with the D-line because I was excited. I remember being really excited last year about the linebackers. And then it didn't end up materializing. It didn't come to fruition, and we had a struggling defense, and we still have a defensive coordinator that, frankly, we all don't totally believe in. With that, we're gonna move on to Junior Day. There's a lot of good stuff happening with we talked about the 24 class, we talked about the 25 class. We're happy with them both. The 26 class is now the next piece that's going to be worked on. We are going to go through 6 guys that Nick got to see up in Madison and talk to, and he's going to give us some recruiting nuggets on those guys. And then I'm going to tell you guys now what I'm going to ask you at the end of these 6, so you can be thinking about it. I want your opinion on who the highest upside guy is of these 6, who is the most likely Badger, and who we need the most. So be thinking about those 3 questions: highest upside, most likely Badger, and who we need the most. And then we're going to kind of break this all down for you. We did some of film review last week. We're not going to show film today. I didn't tee that up. We're going to talk through these guys. So I'm going to lead it off, and then Nick, I want you to take all these first up and give us your thoughts, give us your recruiting nuggets, and then Justin, your thoughts on the guys as well. We'll start with Gavin. Is it Mueller or Miller? What's the Mueller.
Yep.
Gavin Mueller, composite 3-star tight end, 6'5", 240 pounds, out of Wheaton, Illinois. Key offers: Florida, Minnesota, Illinois, Texas A&M. Certainly a position that that we need. That obviously Grimes likes, and we're going to need that. Nick, give us your thoughts on Mueller. How was his junior day? Give us some recruiting nuggets on him.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned Coach Grimes there, Rajiv. Actually, speaking with Gavin, his biggest takeaway really was the meeting with Grimes and just kind of the enhanced tight end focus and the potential that could be had in Wisconsin. Now, this is an interesting one, right? Because he doesn't have a ton of varsity film in terms of a pass catcher. This was really like early on this past year. Still, he's newer to playing varsity football. But you mentioned his size. He's a basketball player. He's very athletic. He's strong. So he'd be a great fit. This staff has been on him for a long time. I love what they've done. And in terms of recruiting, I'm not sure I'd put anybody ahead of Wisconsin. I'll mention Duke is a legitimate threat here too. I don't know if you mentioned them in the offers. A&M, but he came away impressed, especially with meeting with the new OC. No Notre Dame offer has come. They're a school that's kind of checked in here and there that would be one to watch here. But again, no offer there yet. Personally, I like where Wisconsin sits right now. I think he's probably got the best relationships here in Madison with any staff.
Nice.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm curious about this. I've seen a lot of tight end offers go out. What's the board look like there? You have any clue? Because they've got 7 guys they're chasing after right now. Is Mueller at the top?
Well, what I would say, and what we can kind of break down on the show is that not every offer that goes out obviously is going to be like a top of the board guy. I mean, you obviously know enough about recruiting with that. I do think that they're expanding the board a little bit right now, just because you look at some of the offers, like they're Midwest guys.
Yeah, South Dakota kid.
I think, South Dakota kid, Kansas kid. I think his name's Kevin Sullivan. Like a lot of offers in the Midwest. It's incredible. But I would say some of the key names that I have really kind of kept my eyes on. Just broke it about an hour ago. His top schools: Landon Myree from Ohio, Gavin Mueller, and then Evan Jacobson. Now, Jacobson is a high 4-star, top 8 or 9 tight end in the nation. He just picked up Notre Dame and said that that means a lot. They're going to be one to watch. So I'm actually going down to see him next weekend. So I'll have a fresh report there. But I'd say those are the key ones I'll watch for, Justin. I do think there will be more with Eddie Whiting from South Dakota. I think that's legitimate. But yeah, it's pretty open right now, just because there's so much talent at the position, but a lot of schools are flocking.
Is this a 2 tight end class or just 1?
I would say it depends on who you can hit on.
Yeah, I think it's 2 high-level guys. You take both, but we took 2 last year, and that room is starting to get pretty full.
Yeah, but if, like you said, if you can hit on a couple of the top guys, especially because they have different skill sets, all 3 that I named, you're looking at a couple, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's move to the pass catchers. We've got 3 of them that we're going to talk about. We did touch on this guy a bit last week. Zach Washington, composite 3-star receiver, 6'2", $175, also out of Wheaton, Illinois. Some of his offers: Miami, good offer list: Miami, Nebraska, Ole Miss, Minnesota. Curious your thoughts on him, Nick, and what you can tell us about his recruiting. There's just not a lot of film from a route running perspective on Zach Washington. Certainly a kick return. There's plenty of stuff out there. What are your thoughts on him, and what can you tell us about how his junior day visit was?
I've got a lot of thoughts here. I'm fortunate to have seen Mueller and Washington in person, multiple games. So I've seen a ton of his live tape. Guys, I think he's a 4-star. I'm going to be honest. I hear you, Rajiv, but he can fly. He's got good hands. He's explosive, decent height, can add muscle, obviously, as time goes on. Wisconsin loves him. All of these schools love him. Like, we're going to talk about another guy, so I won't say his name, but the guy we're about to talk about, and Washington, I'm not sure many guys on this list had better, eval periods, if you're just talking about picking up offers, than they did, because it was like a new Big Ten school every week for Washington. I think he's really impressive. honestly phenomenal. I think he's a 4-star guy. And in terms of recruiting, I feel even more comfortable than I did about Mueller, saying I would put Wisconsin at the top right now. Like, he loves the staff. Family really likes Wisconsin as well. But I think he's building some good connections with other spots too, just from what I've read and some of the visits he's taking. So an official visit will be key. I expect him to take one. He told me that he's working on getting one scheduled right now. And you talk about a perfect fit. Like, Vinny Anthony moves on, hopefully, to the NFL, and just another vertical threat that can hopefully take a beating inside if you need to as well. Like, I love the fit, I'm going to be honest. And I think right now the Badgers are up there, guys.
Let me ask you a quick question, and Justin, I'll come to you next about your thoughts on Washington. But we did get a question on YouTube that I wanted to bring up. Is it on your website, 247, of course, badger247.com. If you're not behind the paywall, trust me, it's good stuff. Nick puts amazing content out there, badger247.com. Check it out. The visits tab, is that only updated when official visits happen, right? So junior days guys do not ever get put on your visits tab, correct? Am I understanding that right? So it had to be OVs for that?
Thread for it.
In short, essentially, like, you will see them at times, but on my site specifically, we're focused on OVs, and then I just start a new thread for every big visit day. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So definitely go check out that stuff on badger247.com. Your thoughts, Justin, on Zach Washington?
Yeah, I think when I evaluate him, like we talked about him, and I said the route tree that they have him running, there's not a ton of it there, but from an athletic tool standpoint, I love his tools. I think he's probably close to a legit 6'2". I think he can really run. I think there's a fluid athlete there. And you look at what he can do. When you see a guy that can be a returner, you know the guy's probably pretty twitchy, even at the high school level, because he's able to adjust quickly on the fly. Anthony is probably a pretty good comparison. We talked about him before, but I do think this kid has more upside than Anthony overall. Like, I think he can be a legitimate number one type if everything clicks together, just based off the physical tools.
There are certain guys where I see, when I look at like junior film, that I'm like, okay, that's really exciting, and I want to follow that guy. But for the most part, when I watch junior film, I'm like, okay, I'll wait till the senior film comes out, just because it's hard to get good judgment. There are some of these guys, a couple of guys we're going to talk about, that I feel like you can see some of those things now, but we'll see. Next up on the receivers, Owen Cabell. We did touch him a bit again last week, but want to go some more detail here. Composite 3-star receiver, 6'3", 195 pounds, out of Nashville, Tennessee. Other offers include Georgia, Arkansas, Tennessee, Illinois, and Indiana. Nick, tell us about Owen Cabell.
Another, again, potentially really good fit, more of the sizable boundary type receiver that I think would fit within this offense. He came up here, really liked his visit. I expect Wisconsin to get an OB. Other schools to really watch out for here, I would say, are Illinois, Vandy. Georgia did offer, and he's interested, but I'm not sure exactly, if they're pushing as much as some of these other schools right now. I think that it was a really good experience for him to get to meet with Coach Reed. And, from what he told me, Coach Reed is building a good connection with him and his family as well. So while I'm not going to be as confident saying I think Wisconsin leads for him, I think they're in a good spot, and I think the visit was another positive for Cabell.
Yeah, I kind of compared him a little bit to Aberdarius in some ways, just by the way he moves on the field. I don't think he's quite as sudden as a guy like Aberdarius was, and Aberdarius, just hand-eye coordination was great. Like, he was such a stud. So I like this kid. I actually, like, somebody brought him up in the chat, the kid that's from Georgia that they recently offered, who seems like he's going to blow up, who ran like a ridiculous 100 time. I'm trying to remember what his name is. He was the one that I was kind of wondering if they're going to be able to get in on him, because Cabell seems like a guy that I don't want to make it seem like I don't love him, but he seems like a guy that we've traditionally gotten. Like, I'm not sure I see a 4-star receiver there. And I think that's where, if you want to see Wisconsin step up, you need to see guys that legitimately could be a huge difference maker. I feel like Cabell's a little bit more of a raw, let's see what we can turn him into kind of guy.
Yeah, look, I think when you watch on film, he's got go routes for days on film. And
a lot like
that's
Washington.
fine. And yeah, right. I mean, and that's okay because you're going to use him like that when he's that much faster than the guys out there. I think the one thing I like about him is I feel like he's got really good vision once he catches the ball. He's got a really good understanding of space, and he's got a lot of yak ability, right? Like yards after the catch. I feel like once he catches the ball, he gets a really good understanding of how to use space, how to use angles. I did notice that on film. I picked that up, and I'm like, wow, like I feel like that could be something that translates to the next level. And we'll hope that can come of that. Was it Mosley? Is that who you were talking about from Georgia?
Yeah, I think that was the kid. I'm just double checking
it
real quick right now, but I'm pretty sure it was Mosley. No, I don't know if it was. I'm trying to remember who it was. I thought it was another. Never mind. I can't. I don't want to hold this up.
You keep checking on that. We'll go to the last wide receiver that we're going to talk about. Messiah Tilson. I'm really curious to your thoughts on this. I have some thoughts on this guy, Nick, but 3-star wide receiver, 6'2", 165. Not that big of a kid out of Rockford, Illinois. Other offers include Missouri, Minnesota, Iowa, Kansas, Illinois, among several others. Your thoughts on Messiah Tilson? What can you tell us about him? He's an interesting one to me.
I was thinking of Dallas Dickerson, by the way.
So with Messiah, Rajiv, looking at him as safety here. So it'd be more of a defensive side.
Oh, it's a defense. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Safety. And man, Justin talks about tools a lot. Like, I think that this kid has them. Rockford, that's actually my original hometown. So pretty cool. Maybe not always the big D1 offers coming from there for football. Really high on his potential. Like, you'll hear me say a little bit more after this. Recruitment a little bit harder to read. He's picked up a lot of these offers recently. From what I understand, Iowa will be one to watch. He told me he wants to visit Kentucky, but I think that Jack Cooper, Pat Lambert, I think that they did some really good things on this visit. And he told me that Wisconsin was higher on the board for him after this trip. So I think he's a guy that if Wisconsin continues to push, they'll be in there for a long time. I need to see more film personally because he's a two-way guy, and I don't know just what the competition is always like there. But, again, you talk about tools, I think he's really got them.
Well, I'm glad you said that but I did not know that he was being recruited as a safety because I don't like him as a wide receiver recruit. So that's what I was going to say. I'm like, why are we recruiting this guy? It's wide receiver. I didn't like him. Now
you got to keep up on my recruiting stories.
Now it all makes sense. Now it all makes sense. There you go. Justin, any thoughts on Messiah?
Yeah, I think I agree with you in that regard. I think what we would all agree, and I really like the two safeties that we brought in this last class. You probably need somebody that's brings. Both guys were physical in the last group. I think you kind of want a battery ram guy. If I was to say that there's something I'm really looking forward to, a Raphael Dunn, like guy who's like a kind of the bigger bodied safety. Because the one thing I will say about the two guys that we brought in this last class, they both can fly, and I think both are willing hitters. I'm not sure I see either one of them getting, to that 210 range or something like that. If you want somebody who's going to be more of a box type safety, that they're more versatile, I guess what I would call the 2 and the 25 cycle. I'd like to see somebody that's a little bit more of a hammer that they're bringing in, kind of like Raphael Dunn profiles as, where he's a guy that can kind of do a little bit of both.
Let's keep it on the defensive side of the ball. And a couple of guys that I think we both like. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. So Jake Johnson will start there. Defensive lineman, 6'3", 290 out of Prosper, Texas. Has some offers from USC, Utah, Texas Tech, SMU. Nick, talk to me about Jake Johnson.
Our guy Justin can't hide the smile, man. That's funny.
He's one of my dudes this cycle. I really like the film. Really,
we're gonna disagree. So okay, let's go. Nick, tell me.
I'm usually with you, Rajiv. I'm with Justin. Really good player. I love his measurements. And I was alluding to somebody blowing up over this week. When I'm in on like speaking with kids early, or I think I made this kid's profile back in the fall. So like I've tried to stay up to date, keeping it updated on the offers. There have been too many, quite honestly. Like it hasn't quite hit. Maybe like full blue blood type, but it's darn close. He picked up USC recently. UNC under Belichick, I think, is obviously going to recruit a little different. So his recruitment's blowing up. He loves Wisconsin. Family loves Wisconsin. A couple of the Texas schools I think he's high on as well, TCU, SMU. So this is one based on when all these offers came. Or would that have been January, early February, a couple maybe. I think that this goes the distance. I expect Wisconsin to get an OV. And it was just another successful trip. But again, it's just going to come down to what this young man's really looking for. If he's feeling like wanting to play far away from home, because like I mentioned, a lot of options. I think it's not going to be exact, but I think he went from like 8 or 9 offers to like 24 in a week and a half. So really picking up, and as Justin will probably go into as well, would be a phenomenal fit under Willow.
Yeah. Watching his film, I loved Pavy's senior film. I actually think that Jake Johnson, his film for his junior year, is better than Pavy's, and I don't think it's particularly close. I really like some of the suddenness from Pavy, but Johnson is strong. Like, he is a kid who's got a ton of strength, and there's some good suddenness there. Like, he sheds blockers and gets in the backfield quick, and he's playing in Texas football. So I
was going to say, good competition, man.
I think that he's a legit guy. Like, I look at him, and he's the type of guy I want on the interior at Wisconsin. I actually think he's a guy who could probably carry 310 and be a disruptive interior guy for Wisconsin. And I do worry. I don't know if they'll necessarily see the top guys, but I do think he's going to see some offers that we don't want to see him get because they're going to be problematic for us.
I need to see more out of Jake Johnson. Yes, he plays in Texas, but so did Braden Locke. So let's not,
let's not compare defensive linemen to
I will say I agree. The talents from the offensive line he's going against is solid. I didn't see a guy that jumps off the page to me as someone who can be super disruptive on the interior of the line. I saw a guy that I worry about getting swallowed up by really good Big Ten offensive linemen. I'm not saying he's not going to be good. I just need to see more. He goes into the category of, okay, fine, let's file it away. Let's see what a senior film looks like. Nothing jumped off the page. On the next guy we're going to talk about jumped off the page a little bit to me. And Jake Johnson was fine. But I didn't see anything that I was like, I expected a bit more penetration from him. I like seeing those D linemen really get disruption in the backfield. I didn't see as much of that. Just a little bit of I'm not like super excited about him like I have other guys, but we'll see.
You're the tiebreaker.
Well, Nick definitely likes him.
I do, and I'll just say, man, because I'm getting more into, the Midwest recruiting, national a little bit. Colleges are loving this kid. That is what I will say.
That's good. Hey, so I'm not a recruiter. Now, the next guy we talked about last week, but I've sort of changed my tune a bit for watching more of him. Jackson Samuels Ford, composite 4-star edge, 6'4", 230. I could have that weight wrong. I'm not sure where he is now. Out of Malvern, Pennsylvania. Offers from pretty much every Big Ten school out there: Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, USC, Minnesota. Tell us about Jackson Samuels Ford. I like this kid, and I've watched a lot more film on him this week, Nick. I like him a lot. Tell me what you think.
Also like him. I think football and outside of football, just getting to know him a little bit, really into kind of the community that he saw in Madison. Super smart kid. I think he would be a picture perfect fit for this defense, especially as kind of that edge spot, walk up a little bit, pass rush, D-line type of position. Continues to evolve a little bit, as we've talked about with size. I see this one. This isn't a huge hot, kind of hot topic, hot call for me, hot take saying, but I think he ends up in the Big Ten. Wisconsin, Michigan, Penn State, Rutgers, the top schools to watch right now. And I do see Matt Mitchell and the Badgers getting an OB here.
Is he a priority for any of the top guys, like Michigan? Do you know?
I don't know from them, but Penn State, Rutgers, actually, yeah, I do think. I mean, when these schools that are going to see him, like, you're pretty interested, and I think they all did. So,
I found it very interesting that Wisconsin got him for the January visit. Then I know some of the other schools didn't do that, so that's why I was curious.
Well, and he may have seen, some of them before. Like, sure. He hasn't been to Madison, he told me, and Matt Mitchell went out there like 3 weeks ago, and the kid just loved what he heard. So he wanted to visit. He and his mom came, and it seemed like it went pretty dang well. I mean, I was like, whoa, after I talked with him.
He reminds me of Jaden Woods from last cycle. I just think that, like, the same thing I had kind of said about Jaden Woods, which was I don't see him as a traditional Badger edge. Like, we look at like guys like Clayton. Clayton is the type of guy that I look at that when I think of Badger outside linebackers in our 3-4. guys who are super quick and explosive off the edge.
That's fair.
I think that he fits more like an NFL 3-4 kind of guy, where it's more of he's fast, but he's not necessarily that level of twitch. And I think that this is where we talk about the jack position and what they're doing with like Williams and stuff. He fits that profile, I feel like, more to me.
They like him though, Justin. Yeah. But again,
I just think it's a different skill set. I think that I can understand them liking him. He's just not a guy that I think you look at and you're like, I want this guy dropping in space.
I think with his size though, and some of his production, and again the offer list, and he plays tight end, like you go for him and you take him if he wants.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think like you're going to use him as an edge rusher more so than like a guy who's going to be versatile off the side.
And he can be kind of a hand in the dirt edge rusher. He can be kind of a four front. The more I watched more of his film this past week, and I think his vision is really good. Speed of pursuit is nice. He's like a violent tackler too, and he really gets off blocks well.
Physical.
Really physical. So yeah, there's a guy, I think that's one of those guys where you watch junior film, you're like, okay, I get it. I did say he looked more a bit of a 3-star to me for now. I'm not saying he's not a 4-star kind of a guy, but I need to see a bit more out of him. But still, really like his film, and there's definitely a lot of activity there. All right, we're getting a little bit long. Let me end the show by doing this, guys. Highest upside. So the 3 questions I asked you, Nick, I'm going to start with you, and then Justin, and same 2 for you, same 3 for you. Highest upside guy in this group that we just talked about, Nick.
So probably unexpected, especially because of the names we've really kind of hit on, but just based on kind of being a little bit newer to things. And just kind of some of the skills that he has, I think Tilson might be the highest upside guy.
Oh, wow.
We've already got him as a high 3-star, and I just think with some of his measurables and versatility, he could be a 4, quite honestly.
Yeah, for me, I'm sticking with Jake Johnson. I think that he should be a 4-star by the time all is said and done. Like I see that.
He probably will be.
It's just he looks so adept at being able to hold the middle and kind of get through his man. Now, I will agree with you, Gio. I understand where you're coming from. He's not a guy who finishes, but he is a guy who gets past the point of attack and gets into the backfield. It's just he tends to be the guy who forces the disruption rather than the guy who finishes the play. So I really like him. I think that he's got a chance to be really good. And if I had to do a 1B, it would probably be Washington. If he gets refined, I think there's NFL-type explosiveness there.
Yeah, all right. Who do we need the most? Looking at our roster construction that we have in the, including the 25 class, who do we need the most, Justin? Who do you feel like, from maybe a position standpoint or this profile of the player?
It's kind of those 2 guys again, I would say, are probably the 2 that I look at where I'm the most, until I see the interior of the defensive line, have a guy who we can look at and be like, this guy's a stud. I want to throw bodies at it until we hit it. But I also look at the outside on the receiver core, and I'm like, we don't really have a guy after Vinny Anthony that I look at that I feel comfortable with being the next guy up either, though. So Washington kind of falls into that same realm where it's like they need to find somebody that can kind of step in as soon as he's going, because he's gone after this year. You're going to have to find somebody that can stretch the field and be productive out there, and I don't know if we have that guy.
Damn it, Justin. Similar as we often are. It'd be one of those 2 guys for me. I think if I had to pick one, just because I actually feel like encouraged about where Wisconsin is with several other similar players to Jake Johnson right now along the D-line, I think I would go with Washington. I don't mean to say it about multiple guys, but again, perfect fit. I think there's a reason the staff is making him this much of a priority. That is very evident. And I will say, Justin, I think Hilton is a guy that will be able to stretch the field. But I get what you're saying, straight speedster, go routes vertically. Washington's a guy that could play within his first 2 years, and that'd be my pick, Reggie.
I look at Hilton as a better green. I think that he's not going to be a guy that I necessarily see as a burner, but I think that and this could be significantly a better green, like an NFL type guy. I just don't know if you're necessarily putting him out there running a fly to pull coverage.
You
want kind of working underneath, because I think he's skilled enough as a receiver to kind of work the middle, and you could take deep shots to him, but I think he's just going to work better in the intermediate.
I mean, his route running is fantastic for sure. Okay, Nick, this one's really for you. Based on what you know, who's the most likely Badger? Who do you feel like the staff is in love with the most, or the players in love with the staff? Like, who do you think is the most likely guy to come to Madison?
Yeah, I mean, we know things can change, but in this moment, I think I would pick Washington. I think after that recent call that I had, and I got to speak with his father as well, included stuff in the story. I just feel the way that this staff has gone to see him in the fall, made him a priority now, going to see him a couple days later after the visit, when you can go see him at school or home. Multiple trips. I think head coach Luke Fickell saw him, Guyton saw him, Coach Reed. Like, that doesn't mean a kid's going to end up here, but smart kid. I think he's really realized that. The family likes Madison, and that'd be my pick right now. I feel pretty good there.
All right, there you go. All right, well, that's going to do it for our show today. Final thoughts, Justin, before we close it.
Yeah, hopefully we have a good, strong February from the basketball team. I think we would all like to see the trend that we've seen over the last few years disappear and have this team finish strong. They need it going into March this year. I would like to see them go in on a hot streak where they're kind of clicking on all cylinders and be ready to roll. Football, I think we're all kind of cautiously optimistic that things will be better this year. What that means from a record standpoint, I have no idea. But I think we'd all be happy with seeing improved play and feeling like we're moving in the right direction overall.
That quiet comfort, right, guys?
That's right. That's right. My final thoughts for today's show are going to be the same thing that I started it with. Carter freaking Gilmore. What a performance. Keep that man going. I mean, listen, if Carter Gilmore plays with that kind of confidence as we move forward, again, in this brutal schedule of games against quad, like everything's pretty much a quad one game this month. It's going to be a brutal schedule. He's going to be a really critical piece to what we do. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next weekend. Sorry, Justin has one more thing.
Just for Doc, because he's in the chat talking right now. Go Philly.
Yeah, Doc, I will agree, because I cannot stand the freaking Chiefs. So yeah, I hate to admit it, but
Is Doc watching the show?
Yeah, he's in there.
I absolutely am rooting for Philadelphia because I cannot stand the Chiefs. I cannot stand
I want to be able to see the comments sometime, man. Doc's awesome. But sorry, Doc, I need that 3-peat.
Get out of here. Oh, yeah. All right, guys. We'll be back next week once again to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. And as always, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.